So I just played around a bunch with the like color settings of the camera, so if things are looking weird, sorry. Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my best books of 2024. I feel so excited right now to film this video. I finally feel ready to talk about my best books of 2024. 2024 overall, I'm not certain how to describe it as a reading year. It's not really a reading year that is going to define me, I feel like. I've still read like quite a few 5 stars, I would say. But other than like 1 or 2 books, there's not really anything that like defines this. Like previous years we've had the year I got into military fantasy, the year I discovered Fredrik Backman. It's not like a standout year in that way, but the top books I'm going to talk about today are still amazing books, and you should definitely check them out if you have not yet read them. I will be talking about my top 10 books of the year, ranked, and I will also do a few honorable mentions. And just an important disclaimer, I am excluding rereads in these lists, and I'm only talking about books I read in 2024 for the first time, and on top of that, the books don't need to have been released in 2024, it's like all books, just books I read. To start, let's just throw out a few honorable mentions of books I perhaps rated like 4.5 that I genuinely enjoyed, felt a connection to, but for some reason wasn't that solid 5 out of 5 star. I highly recommend all of these books, and I'm just gonna shout them out quite quickly. So we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This was one of my first reads of 2024. Adored it. It's a beautiful story. I believe it's called Bildungsnovell, when you follow characters throughout their lives. Really enjoy it, really recommend it. I get the hype. I get why this is a popular book. Second honorable mention is Ripe. This one is incredible as well, and it's just a story that you connect with. That one has stuck with me, and I also love the cover. The third honorable mention is Reaction Fiction. I don't actually know if it's called Reaction Fiction or just Reaction, no clue. Listen to this one as an audiobook. It was an intense experience. It's not for everyone. It's freaky, it's weird, it's extremely explicit, but it was also freaking brilliant. So if you have the guts for it, go ahead. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder is my next honorable mention, mainly because it took me by surprise. I rarely read young adult books nowadays, and this one I read for a particular video, and I really enjoyed it, and I get the hype on the series, and I want to continue with the series. I liked the writing, I liked the format with the mixed media, I liked the main character. It's a really, really good book. I get it now. It deserves a mention on this list. And fifth and final honorable mention before we get into the list is Just Last Night. Incredible audiobook, great story, took a turn I did not expect. My friends have been hyping up this book and this author for years, I feel like now, and I'm so glad I finally read one of their books, and I will definitely continue to read more from this author in the future. So there we had just like a rapid fire honorable mentions, but now let's head into our top 10, starting with number 10. Let's start this off with a non-fiction, more specifically Girl Decoded by Rana El Kalioubi. I still haven't learned how to pronounce her name, unfortunately. This is a memoir written by Rana in collaboration with Carol Coleman. The subheader is My Quest to Make Technology Emotionally Intelligent and Change the Way We Interact Forever. It's been a while since I read this. It was one of my first reads of 2024. It's Rana's story as an Egyptian Muslim woman and how she became a pioneer in the field of artificial emotional intelligence. A bit of backstory about me, if you don't know, I work with computer science, data analytics, data engineering, things like that, AI, machine learning. Those are all quite present topics in what I do, and I am intrigued by the subject, even though I don't necessarily work a lot with AI, but it's still important for me to understand the concepts of it, and I did study it back in university and things like that. I have an interest in technology overall, and more specifically data science, data analytics. I think this was such an amazing story. It's a lot about like how she was encouraged to study when she was young, and then about her internal conflicts when it came to like if she should pursue her career or focus on her family, her husband, things like that, and also the struggles, occasional struggles with her family, about living abroad, long distance relationships, culture clashes. It covers a lot of ground overall. Overall, I think this is an incredible memoir, a really interesting book to read as well if you have any interest in AI, machine learning, technology, things like that. Interesting read, recommend. Number 9. For number 9 we have a series conclusion, and it's no other than Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. Look at this freaking beast that I read this fall. It's the third and final book in the Greenbone saga. I'm so glad I finally completed the series, and this book in itself is incredible because the story is told across decades now. So we have the first book, which is Jade City, we then have Jade War, and we're ending the trilogy with Jade Legacy. And the first few books, the stories are told throughout like a couple of years, 1 to 2 years I would say. This one spans 20 plus years. And I think it's a masterpiece in itself that it's able to do that. I am so obsessed with this family and these characters. I feel so much for them, and I'm rooting so hard for them throughout the entire series. When I finished this book, I wasn't sure if I had finished the book or the book had finished me, because I was a wreck. Not only because of the ending, but just the fact that I would not hang out with this family anymore. I would not be a part of the Cowles' everyday journey and like everything they stood for and everything they were doing. And that wrecks me. Honestly, I miss them so much, because this freaking family is a mess, but it's so freaking good. If you don't know, this is a epic fantasy series inspired by like Hong Kong mafia. They trade in jade, which is a stone that enhances some people's abilities. They get stronger, faster, lighter, things like that. And the Cowles family sort of controls the jade trade, and it's like a clan, and they have another clan that there's like a war that's going on, or they're always like fighting for who's in the better position, I guess. It's just something that escalates throughout this entire series until this epic finale. So it's a lot of politics, a lot of strategy, and occasionally the book might feel a bit slow. I have had similar issues with the previous book in the series, but that's because like it is clan business. Everything that's going on is like strategic political work where like people are working on relationships and trade lines and things for decades before they even see the results of that. Because of that, it can be experienced as a bit slow, because like they are constantly building their empire, and that takes time. That's not something that's just done in like a few months. Incredible book though, incredible series. I do highly recommend it to everyone. These characters, I love these characters, and I have tabbed it as well when I read it. There were so many cliffhanging moments in this as well, I had to like strategically plan my reading of this book, just because I knew that okay, if I continue to read 2 more pages, I'm gonna be a wreck, and I'm not in a place, because I might be out in public or heading to work or something, where I can manage this sort of distress right now. So I had to like be a bit more picky about when I picked up this book. Book number 8. We have a romance, first romance of the list, and that romance is 7 Days in June, which I wanted to read in June, but I actually read in July. This is a second chance romance. We are following 2 characters, Eva and Shane, and they had a very intense, very short-lived relationship back in the day, and they reconnect, what is it, like 10-15 years later, something like that. This is a beautiful romance. Like, just how it's written. 7 days to fall in love, 15 years to forget, and 7 days to get it all back again. It's also authors that we're following. So Eva writes like a romantasy sort of series, urban fantasy, and Shane is more of a literary type of character and author. I just thought there were so many beautiful quotes in here as well, of like healing and moving on from things. It's a beautifully written book, and I'm very interested to read more by this author, by Tia Williams. Here's a quote I loved. "Listen, caring about things don't make you soft, it makes you alive." I love that. This is a really cute one. Her words were a verbal blush. That's adorable. Can someone describe me like that, please? Eva was older, but the same bones were under her skin. Ah! Oh, yeah. Stunning book. Beautiful. Quite a quick read as well. Not too long. Highly recommend this romance. It's stunning. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Number 7. Dinner with Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz, aka one of the actresses from One Tree Hill. And I listened to this one as an audiobook recently. I think I devoured it within like 24 hours, if I'm being honest. It's it's her memoir, biography, autobiography, I always forget how to describe that. But it's her story about how she joined a cult. She was in a cult during the time she was on One Tree Hill, and this is sort of her expose of that and how she broke out of that. It's a celebrity memoir with a lot of tea in it, I must say. I really enjoyed this book. I thought her narration of it was beautiful as well. Like just her voice, how she was telling things, the production of the audiobook overall. We also had some guest appearances from the actors of One Tree Hill as she was describing a setting with that particular actress. So for example, she is describing one of her auditions with Chad Michael Murray, and we actually have Chad voicing his parts in that conversation. And I like that touch. I did enjoy it. I think it's so interesting with these, not with cults necessarily, but how people might get manipulated and drawn into situations where they can't really control things. I don't know how to explain it, but I think it's really interesting to hear her perspective of how she ended up in this cult as just a young girl looking for people with similar interests who understood and cared for her, and how it led into her being so controlled for so many years of her life, and how she sort of realized that and then managed to break out of it. Really interesting book. If you have enjoyed other celebrity memoirs, I highly recommend this one as well. Speaking of celebrity memoirs, number 6. From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. This is the memoir biography of Lisa Marie, aka Elvis Presley's daughter. If you don't know, I'm an Elvis Presley fan. I've read quite a lot of the memoirs and books about him. This was an obvious anticipated release for me this year. This book is incredible, mainly in its production, okay? So Lisa Marie actually started writing this book, but then a year or so into working on it, she passed away. And her daughter, Riley Keough, also known from the Daisy Jones and the Six series, where she plays Daisy Jones, she completed the book. It's a very interesting thing in the audiobook because Julia Roberts actually narrates Lisa Marie's parts, and then Riley narrates her own parts, but then there's actually a third sort of voice, which is Lisa Marie on her tapings as she was working on the book. We get stories from Lisa Marie's perspective as she was growing up on Graceland, and then following the death of her father, her relationship to her mother's other relationships, and then Lisa Marie's relationships. She was married to Michael Jackson, she was married to Nicolas Cage. On top of that, we also get Riley's perspective on everything, and she brings, I feel like my impression of Riley after listening to this book, it was already great. That woman is incredible because she brings so much nuance and perspective and reflection and just like so much more to the book, more than her mother's words. I thought that was freaking brilliant, and just as I mentioned, the production of the audiobook overall, so good, so good. I do think I want to own this one physically because I'm guessing there are some photos in that one. It would be a cool addition to my shelf actually. I guess you need to have an interest in either like Elvis's life or Lisa Marie, or just once again celebrity gossip for you to enjoy this book. But if you're looking for a solid celebrity memoir audiobook, I highly recommend this one. Obviously, as an Elvis fan, I'm wearing an Elvis shirt right now actually. I missed that. Hold on. Do you see? Boom! Haha. That wasn't even intentional, it just happened. Let's bring it back to some physical reads with book number 5, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. This has been on my TBR for ages. I've had this book since 2020, I think. It's an incredible read and it's a devastating read. In the story, we are following Vanessa, who when she was 15 had a relationship with her English teacher. And they are still in touch like 10-15 years later. Like they are still occasionally meeting and talking. But suddenly this English teacher is accused by another former student of sexual abuse. And this sort of tips Vanessa's entire world. Because in her head, what she had with her teacher was mutual. It was love. It was an actual relationship. It wasn't abuse. Yeah, she was 15, but it wasn't that in her head. That's what she's been telling herself throughout all of these years. And now when someone actually makes this accusation, she starts to question things and is sort of forced to come to the realization that, oh, perhaps this wasn't okay. She's struggling with admitting that to herself, because if she admits that, her entire identity, her entire life is a lie in some way. And I think the way it's written, it's so smart. Like, we know as the readers, when we start reading about this relationship, how wrong it is, how awful and disturbing it is, and that he is an abuser. It's an interesting experience as the reader to read this one, I must say. I wrote that this book made me feel horrified, disgusted, disturbed, frustrated, angry, and sad. I appreciated the complexity of Vanessa's thoughts while still having the perspective of being the reader and so clearly seeing the truth of the story. Very well executed. I agree with my past self. If you feel like you're able to read a book like this and are not triggered by it for any sort of reason, I do highly recommend it. It is a very solid and interesting and important read. Number 4. It wouldn't be a complete Charlotte's favorite list if we did not have a Bachman on it, would it? And fortunately for us, Mr. Bachman released a short story on the 1st of December of 2024, which is called The Answer Is No. Now, this is a very short story about a man called Lucas who has no interest in any sort of social contact with people. Like, he lives in his apartment, he works from home, he orders takeout, and he's very happy. He doesn't need to interact with anyone, he doesn't need to talk to people, he likes it that way. But one day, his neighbors ring on his doorbell and things just develops from there. And the story is written in Bachman's typically quirky sort of way with a lot of heartfelt moments. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Perhaps I'm very biased because Bachman is my favorite author. Part of me feels like he can do no wrong, so it obviously I was gonna give the book 5 stars. But I also think it's a really well executed short story. Just the storytelling, the characters. That's the amazing thing with Bachman is you know these characters he writes about. Like the characters, both the main character Lucas, but also his neighbors and the people on the board of the apartment complex and things like that. You know these peoples, you have met them in your own life, and that's what makes his stories so genuine and true. I'm so glad we got something from him this year, and I'm so excited for his upcoming book in 2025. Now we're getting to the podium. Number 3 on my best books of 2024 is The 7 Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This is another romance, and it's a beautiful romance actually, and once again I completely get the hype. Because I feel like I read this book at the exact right time for me. In the story we are following Clementine, who works as a book publicist, and she is sort of feeling stuck, I guess, or she has worked hard her entire life to get to a certain point in her career, and she recently inherited her deceased aunt's apartment. And this apartment that she inherited has some magic sprinkled into it. So it's a bit of a fantastical read in that way. Sometimes the apartment travels into the past. 7 years into the past to be more exact. The apartment does this one day and she meets a man who she falls in love with, but he lives in the past, she lives in the present, and it's sort of an issue, but not really, and we never have those miscommunication issues. I love the banter between these two characters, it's so genuine and good. I also love Clementine's inner conflicts about what she should do with her life, what she should pursue. It's a cute one, I don't want to say too much, but it's beautifully written, great banter between our main characters, great steam, not problematic. I was never annoyed by anything that this book did, which I feel like is an issue in many romance books, that you get annoyed by the characters because they are either not communicating properly, inconveniences show up, and like just things that ruin the plot and the story and that are just so annoying. And I wasn't annoyed by anything, which is solid. Many great quotes, a lot of inspiration from this one, and I think once again I just read it at the exact right time for me. Because I was going through things, the characters in this book was going through things. Perfect match, right? Top 2 now. Second place, book number 2. We have Carrie Soto is Back. I love this book. I'm obsessed with this book. It's almost my favorite Taylor Jenkins read. I think it's second behind Daisy Jones and the Six. In the story we are following Carrie Soto. She holds the record of most Grand Slam titles. She used to be a professional tennis player, and she is planning for her comeback because someone is coming for her record and she wants to make an attempt to keep it. So it's sort of her at 37 years old making a comeback into tennis and becoming a professional tennis player and going to all of these grand competitions, fighting hard and earning her way back. I adore Carrie as a character. She's very hard-shelled, cold, doesn't show a lot of emotion, very ambitious, focused, disciplined, don't necessarily have that many friends, don't really have a relationship, a partner, has a bit of a strained relationship with her father because of things in the past as well. But she's so like laser focused on her goals, which I think is super inspiring. There's a lot of tennis in this one, but it's fun and it's interesting and it actually explains tennis. So I don't mind it. I just love books and stories about passion, and few things make people as passionate as sports. And I would say this is a really passionate book because we're following Carrie's passion for tennis, other characters' passion for tennis and passions for other things. I really like this. I felt like I was in the games with her. I was rooting for her to do well on her comeback. I don't have enough praise for this book, honestly, and it was this close to taking the cake of being the best book of the year. Number 1. My best book of 2024. This one came as a bit of a surprise. I expected to enjoy it. I did not expect to love and obsess over it. You might have heard me mention this book in some other of my videos, if you've seen my awards and similar. This book did something for me this summer that no other book did. And that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I loved this book. I was obsessed with this book. It gave me everything I wanted a book like this to give me. This is a romantic fantasy, and we are in a fantasy world where there are vampires and other magical creatures. If you're a fellow vampire stan, like I grew up with Twilight, House of Night, Vampire Diaries, all of that, this will make you nostalgic for vampires, and I just gotta say that vampires are back and with a force with this series. We are following Oriah, who is an adopted human daughter of the Nightborn vampire king, and she plans to participate in a legendary competition called the Chiari, where she will be fighting against vampires. As a human, quite dangerous. Winning won't be easy, and to survive she's forced to make an alliance with a particular man called Rain. I still haven't figured out how to say his name. He is a ruthless vampire, an efficient killer, an enemy of her father's crown, and her greatest competition. Obviously, I think you can figure it out for yourself, these two enemies will have some sparks between them. They will have some chemistry, and they might turn into lovers. Yes, they might. I'm not promising, but something might be going on there. The main thing I have been praising this book for is its pacing. I find the pacing of this book to be just right, because this book is about 550 pages. We have the magical competition. I think it's in like 5 or 6 parts that this competition is in. And I do occasionally find that in some stories where we have magical competitions, the pacing of the competition is really off. Like the first part might be super quick, the second part super slow, third part non-existent. Like, if you understand what I mean with that. This one did not feel that way at all. I feel like everything was just so well paced, and the pacing of the story made sense. It made sense for the plot development and the reader's interest. It also made sense for the development of the characters and where they started to end up at emotionally. Pacing in this one. This one, incredible pacing. I also really liked the characters and this world. I do like Oriah. I definitely fell for Rain. I definitely fell for him in this book, I won't lie. Whenever he looks at her and he's like, that's my girl, whew, I swoon a bit every single time. Steamy scenes were great, but we also got the build up for it, so it wasn't like insta love or insta doing the deed or whatever. Also just great banter between the characters, the way they talk. They truly do feel like enemies. It's not one of those, oh, they didn't like each other, so they're enemies. But nah. I mean, like, they are mortal enemies. I cannot praise this one enough. I love this book in particular. I have started its sequel. Must confess I'm not as into it for many reasons, partly because of the characters introduced, partly because of where the story is going, partly because I don't think I'm as in love with Rain as I was before. I still love Oriah. Oriah can do nothing wrong. Rain, he needs to work his way back. But in this first book, everything is perfect. I have no complaints on this book, and that's rare. I have nothing to complain about. Pacing, plot, characters, setting, enjoyment, investment, logic, it all just made sense. It made sense in such an incredible way, and vampires are so back, baby, and I love that for me. I love that for us. And there we have it, my top 10 books of 2024 with some honorable mentions. Let me know, have you read any of these books? What did you think of them, and what was your favorite read of 2024? I would love to know that, actually. I am excited to kick off a new year. I'm hoping to have many more favorites by the end of this year than I had in 2024, even though these books I talked about and mentioned definitely deserve some recognition and love and a read if you have not yet read it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye!